figures in history. Calculated, remorseless, and often hiding in plain sight. In this countdown, we uncover the top 10 most notorious serial killers of all time. From twisted doctors to cannibal killers, these are the darkest minds the world has ever known. Number 10. Richard Ramirez. In the summer of 1984, Los Angeles was gripped by fear. A shadow moved through the night, unpredictable, brutal, and seemingly unstoppable. That shadow was Richard Ramirez, a drifter turned serial killer who became infamously known as the Night Stalker. Ramirez didn't follow any typical pattern. He didn't care about age, gender, or race. His victims ranged from children to the elderly. He broke into homes in the dead of night, attacking without warning, raping, murdering, and mutilating with terrifying cruelty. In some cases, he forced victims to swear to Satan before he killed them. He left behind pentagrams, wore black, and idolized Satan, which added a layer of horror that went beyond the physical crimes. His methods weren't just violent, they were ritualistic, calculated to instill maximum fear. What made him even more terrifying was the randomness of his targets. No one felt safe. Families began locking their doors tighter, sleeping with weapons nearby. LA turned into a city of paranoia. But Ramirez's reign didn't last. In August 1985, a group of citizens recognized him from a mugshot released to the public. They chased him down and beat him until police arrived. He showed no remorse at trial, flashing a pentagram drawn on his hand and famously saying, "You don't understand me. You are not expected to. I am beyond good and evil. Hail Satan." He was convicted of 13 murders, among other charges, and sentenced to death. But he would never face execution. Ramirez died in prison in 2013 from cancer after spending over 2 decades on death row.
Why on earth would you have hurt those people? Why did you kill those people?
No comments. I cannot answer that at this time. They are desires, whereas if I didn't give in to them, I would be crushed by them.
Number 9. Jeffrey Dahmer. Few names strike fear and revulsion like Jeffrey Dahmer, a soft-spoken man whose crimes were so grotesque they seemed almost unbelievable. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer murdered 17 young men and boys, most of whom were people of color. But it wasn't just the killings that horrified the world. It was what he did afterward. Dahmer lured his victims to his apartment with promises of money, drinks, or companionship. Once there, he would drug them, strangle them, and then commit acts of necrophilia and dismemberment. He kept body parts as trophies, including skulls, hearts, and even a full human head in his refrigerator. He admitted to eating portions of some victims, leading the media to dub him the Milwaukee Cannibal. His apartment became a house of horrors. Police later discovered photographs of mutilated bodies, vats of acid used to dissolve remains, and severed body parts hidden in drawers. One chilling detail: Dahmer had been experimenting with drilling holes in victims' skulls and injecting acid to create what he called sex zombies. Despite the horrific nature of his crimes, Dahmer was nearly caught several times, once even returning a bleeding, drugged victim to his apartment in front of police, who believed it was just a lover's quarrel. He was finally arrested in July 1991 when a potential victim escaped and flagged down police. What they found inside his apartment shocked even the most seasoned detectives. In court, Dahmer confessed to everything. He claimed he killed not out of hatred, but out of a desire to control and possess his victims.
I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure instead of a living, breathing human being, it seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do.
Number 8. Gary Ridgway. For nearly 2 decades, Gary Ridgway haunted the Pacific Northwest as one of the most prolific serial killers in US history, dubbed the Green River Killer. After the river where his first known victims were found, Ridgway was a quiet, unassuming man who blended into society, working as a truck painter, going to church, and even marrying while committing his murders in secret. Ridgway targeted vulnerable women, especially sex workers and runaways. He would pick them up in his truck, gain their trust, and then strangle them, often by hand or with a ligature, before dumping their bodies in wooded areas or near water. Sometimes he'd return to the bodies to have sex with them in various stages of decomposition. His ability to evade capture for so long wasn't luck. It was strategy. He carefully avoided leaving behind DNA and spread his murders across a wide area, creating confusion for investigators. All the while, he kept up the image of a normal, working-class man. By the time police finally arrested him in 2001, DNA evidence linked him to several cold cases. Faced with the death penalty, Ridgway confessed to 48 murders as part of a plea deal, later admitting to killing even more. In chilling interviews, he described his motive plainly. "I killed so many women I have a hard time keeping them straight." Unlike many serial killers, Ridgway showed little emotion, little pride, and even less remorse. His goal was simple: eliminate the evidence and move on to the next.
It was July 18th, I think it was my brother's birthday. That weekend I picked up a woman on back highway, and Matthew was next to me in the seat, and she hopped in, and I took her over to in the South Airport area, and took her into an area, and my son was there, and I killed her. I'm real sure my son didn't see it, but that only happened one time.
Number 7. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was the embodiment of chilling contradiction. A respected community member by day and a ruthless killer by night. Known for entertaining children as Pogo the Clown at parties and charity events, Gacy hid a horrifying secret beneath his friendly mask. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy sexually assaulted, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young boys and men, many of whom he lured with promises of work or simply by gaining their trust. His crimes shocked the nation not only for their brutality, but for the disturbing double life he led. Neighbors described him as charming and helpful, never suspecting the horror beneath. Gacy was arrested after police discovered the bodies under his house in 1978. During his trial, he tried to plead insanity, but jurors saw through his facade. He was convicted and sentenced to death.
Tim McCoy's name wasn't put on him until 1988. Prior to that, he was known as Unknown Number 9. And he was buried by me in the crawl space. That's the only knowledge that I have of it.
What was the circumstances of that?
He was killed in the house in self-defense.
And who killed him then?
I stabbed him.
Yeah, and it was an issue of self-defense. Why was he in the process of assaulting you, or what?
He was coming at me with a knife. I just took the knife away and twisted it in his hand, and that's what killed him.
So at that point, you yourself did bury him then in the crawl space.
Right, and if you notice, he's under concrete.
Did you bury any of the others in the crawl space?
No, I had nothing. I had no knowledge of them.
Yeah.
Number 6. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is one of the most infamous serial killers in American history, not just for his gruesome crimes, but for the way he deceived everyone around him. Charming, intelligent, and handsome, Bundy used his looks and charisma to lure young women into his trap. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered at least 30 women across multiple states. His method often involved pretending to be injured or impersonating authority figures to gain their trust. Once he had them isolated, the violence began, often including sexual assault and brutal murder. Bundy's crimes shocked the nation not only because of their number, but because of how he managed to evade capture. He escaped prison twice, once from a courthouse by jumping out a window, leading to a terrifying manhunt. He also represented himself in court, showing off his manipulative personality and attempting to control the narrative until his conviction. Despite overwhelming evidence, Bundy maintained his innocence until just before his execution. In his final interviews, he revealed chilling insights into his mind and crimes.
I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography.
That's true.
And it's real. It's true.
Number 5, Andrei Chikatilo. Known as the Butcher of Rostov, Andrei Chikatilo was one of the most brutal serial killers in Soviet history. For over a decade, he preyed on women and children across Russia and Ukraine, committing horrific acts of violence that shocked an entire nation. Chikatilo's crimes were marked by extreme cruelty. He would lure victims, often vulnerable children and teenagers, to secluded areas where he would sexually assault, mutilate, and murder them. His attacks involved stabbing, cutting, and sometimes cannibalism, earning him a reputation as a sadistic predator. His case was complicated by the Soviet government's initial denial of serial killings, which slowed down investigations and allowed him to continue unchecked for years. He was finally caught in 1990 after a massive manhunt and forensic breakthroughs. During his trial, Chikatilo confessed to 56 murders, describing his uncontrollable urges and violent fantasies.
О муках на том свете и о встрече со своими жертвами. Вы об этом когда-нибудь задумывались?
Не, я не задумывался об этом встрече, как-то не задумывался я. Все это я считаю, что все это меня не касается, как-то все это прошло мимо моего сознания, все это не задумываюсь. Вот о муках своих я мук, сколько мук пережил, я уже, если описать, если мои все муки, я все круги ада уже прошел, я уже был на том свете не раз, поэтому очередной раз я готов. В любое время я уже с этим уже смирился уже.
Number 4, Herman Webster Mudgett. Long before the term serial killer existed, Herman Webster Mudgett, better known as H.H. Holmes, built a dark legacy as one of America's earliest and most terrifying murderers. During the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, Holmes constructed a murder castle, a hotel designed with secret passageways, trapdoors, soundproof rooms, and even a gas chamber, all intended to trap and kill his victims. Holmes lured victims, often young women, to his hotel under the pretense of employment or lodging. Once inside, many never left. The exact number of his victims remains unknown, but estimates suggest he may have killed over 200 people, making him one of the deadliest serial killers in history. His crimes included murder for insurance fraud, torture, and grisly disposal of bodies. Holmes's charm and intelligence helped him evade suspicion for years until police uncovered the horrifying truth. He was arrested in 1894 and sentenced to death, confessing to some of his murders but likely hiding many more. Number 3, Pedro López. Pedro López is one of the most prolific serial killers the world has ever known, and yet his name is far less recognized than it should be. Known as the Monster of the Andes, López preyed on young girls across Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru during the 1970s and early 1980s. He targeted vulnerable children, often from impoverished or displaced communities, luring them away from markets or schools before brutally assaulting and murdering them. The scale of his crimes is staggering. López was finally arrested in 1980 after an attempted abduction failed. During interrogation, he calmly confessed to hundreds of murders with chilling detail, showing no remorse. What's perhaps even more disturbing than his crimes is what happened next. Pedro López was declared insane and sent to a psychiatric hospital. He was released in 1998 after serving just 14 years behind bars. His current whereabouts are unknown. Number 2. Luis Garavito. Luis Garavito is, without question, one of the most sadistic and prolific serial killers the world has ever known. Nicknamed La Bestia, the Beast, his crimes were so horrific and widespread that even seasoned investigators were left shaken. Between 1992 and 1999, Garavito hunted young boys across Colombia, targeting the most vulnerable: street children, orphans, and the poor. He used disguises, posing as a priest, a teacher, a charity worker, to gain their trust. Once alone, he would bind, rape, torture, and murder them in brutal fashion, often leaving their mutilated bodies in shallow graves or open fields. Authorities only began to connect the cases when dozens of child skeletons were discovered across multiple towns. His capture led to the shocking realization: Garavito had kept journals and maps detailing every victim, with names, dates, and locations. He confessed to 147 murders, but investigators believe he killed over 300. Despite the unimaginable scale of his crimes, Colombia's maximum sentence laws meant he received just 40 years in prison, later reduced for cooperation. Though eligible for early release at one point, public outrage kept him behind bar. Number 1. Harold Shipman. Topping the list is a man who didn't lurk in the shadows or prey on strangers in the streets. He wore a white coat, carried a stethoscope, and earned the trust of hundreds. Dr. Harold Shipman, known to many as simply Dr. Death, was a respected general practitioner in England. But behind his calm demeanor was one of the deadliest serial killers in recorded history. Over a span of more than 2 decades, Shipman murdered an estimated 250 of his own patients, most of them elderly women, by injecting them with lethal doses of diamorphine, medical-grade heroin. He would often falsify death certificates and medical records to cover his tracks, making the deaths appear natural. What made Shipman so dangerous was his position of trust. Patients and their families saw him as a kind, reliable doctor. But quietly, methodically, he was ending lives, sometimes multiple in a single week. No one suspected the good doctor. His crimes were uncovered in 1998, when a local woman's daughter raised concerns about her mother's sudden death under Shipman's care. A deeper investigation revealed a disturbing pattern, and soon authorities uncovered a staggering number of suspicious deaths, all connected to him. He was convicted in 2015 murders, but a public inquiry later confirmed his toll was over 200, possibly more. Serial killers aren't just monsters hiding in the dark. They often wear familiar faces, blend into society, and exploit trust to commit unimaginable horrors. From doctors and clowns to charming strangers and drifters, the killers on this list remind us that evil can hide in plain sight. While their crimes may fascinate or horrify, they also serve as grim reminders of how fragile life can be in the hands of those with no conscience. If this list left you speechless, you're not alone. These aren't just stories. They're real lives, real victims, and real tragedies. Thanks for watching.